Hello, everyone. As many of our regular Mantle viewers are aware, our broad theme that has dominated our previous conversations on this podcast has been the whole question of transformational political leaders. We've been on a mission of search for the kind of leaders who can help resolve the persistent crisis of leadership and governance around the world. And today's theme, in particular, focuses on the search for transformational women political leaders under the theme or topic, Beyond Mentorship and Sponsorship, the Making of Transformational Women Political Leaders. To come closer to home, to our country, Kenya, we are approaching the August 2027 general elections, and it is important to bear that in mind as the context to which this topic resides. The political landscape is already taking shape. Alliances are forming, narratives are beginning to be crafted, and ambitions are being declared. Yet, beneath this familiar choreography lies a persistent and uncomfortable truth that while women have made notable gains in accessing political spaces, their presence has not always translated into transformative power and, by extension, transformative leadership. And therefore, in this particular podcast today, we are raising the fundamental question: is access to leadership positions enough? For decades, the discourse on women's political leadership has been anchored on mentorship and, more recently, sponsorship. Both are valuable, both are necessary, but are not sufficient. In a political environment as dynamic, contested, and often exclusionary as Kenya's, what we need is not just more women in leadership, but more transformational women leaders. Leaders who do not merely occupy space, but reshape it. Leaders who do not simply adapt to political systems, but redefine them. And therefore, as we begin today's conversation, we need to reflect on the fact that even though countless efforts have been made in Kenya over the last 5 decades to build the capacity of women for key public decision-making positions, there seems to be a persistent gap between the intended impact of those efforts and the actual outcomes. Additionally, entry into leadership positions remains uneven and challenged by patriarchal gatekeepers, patronage systems, and other informal networks. In these connections, although mentorship has always helped many women build competence and confidence to crash the closed leadership doors, it still does not guarantee nomination, for example, as a candidate for political office and influence at the decision-making tables. So therefore, as we assess the performance of women political leaders, we must acknowledge that numbers alone are not enough for becoming transformational leaders. Therefore, in seeking to address this challenge, our dialogue today interrogates how mentors and sponsors prepare aspiring women leaders for transformational leadership. Today's conversation, therefore, is not just about mentorship or sponsorship. It is also about power and its purpose. It is about how all leaders, both women and men, can become the agents of transforming our society in a manner that meaningfully resolves the urgent socioeconomic and political challenges of our times. Joining me today on the Mantle podcast to interrogate these important issues, I'm honored to host 2 guests. On my right is Professor Wanjiku Kabira, a distinguished scholar, institutional builder, and one of Africa's foremost voices in gender, governance, and transformative leadership. She is a trailblazer in African feminist scholarship. She has dedicated her life, most of her life, to advancing intellectual inquiry in the field of literature and African women's studies. With an illustrious academic career of over 40 years at the University of Nairobi, where she founded and continues to lead the African Women's Studies Center, Professor Kabira has shaped national and continental conversation on women's leadership, power, and institutional reform. Through her writing, research, and public engagement, she continues to challenge structural inequalities while advancing frameworks for inclusive and accountable leadership. Her contributions extend beyond academia into policy influence, civic engagement, and mentorship of several generations of scholars, activists, and public leaders. To date, Professor Kabira remains a thoughtful leader, a mentor, and a nation builder whose work reflects an unwavering commitment to transforming both institutions and perspectives of leadership in Africa. It is indeed an honor to welcome Professor Kabira to today's episode of the Mantle podcast. Karibu sana, Prof.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof.
On my left is my guest who has been here on this show before. Her name is Sophie Mugure. Njehia. This esteemed young guest I have here is a rising voice in Kenya's civic political space. Sophie is a digital strategist, a content creator, and a youth leader whose journey reflects a unique blend of professional discipline, grassroots activism, and principled leadership. Sophie brings to this intergenerational dialogue a diverse background that bridges technology, aviation, and public service. She is currently serving as a customer service representative and a strategist in the private sector, while actively pursuing her political bid as the aspiring member of County Assembly for Thika Township Ward. Sophie is passionate about accountable governance, constitutionalism, and youth empowerment, where she is currently serving as Secretary General of the Revolutionary Gen Z movement and as a member of the National Youth Convention, where she continues to champion citizen-centered service delivery and equitable resource management. More recently, Sophie has become a leading voice in a Gen Z-led Nikokadi movement that is seeking to mobilize the youth to bring about radical change and transformative leadership in totality in the political leadership space through exercising their right to vote at the upcoming 27 general elections. With her bold voice, which you are going to witness today, digital influence, and unwavering commitment to transformative leadership, Sophie embodies the spirit of a new generation, determined to reshape Kenya's future for the better. It is therefore a great honor, Sophie, to welcome you again.
Thank you.
On the Mantle.
Thank you.
Podcast.
Thank you.
And viewers, I am your host, Ambassador Professor Maria Nzomo. So let's just get into the show. And again, I'll start on the right. This is for you, Professor Kabira. Given the introduction we have given you here, everybody knows just the wisdom that you carry apart from just intellectual capacities. You have spent many decades building women's leadership capacities in many contexts, as well as generating relevant knowledge for public policy and action on women's leadership and governance, etc. Could you briefly walk us through your journey and what has most informed your perspective on women's leadership in general, but also on the topic of this today, which is women's political leadership? Prof, you have the floor.
Okay. Now, this is a long journey. So how can I do it, within such a limited...
And try, that's why you are a scholar.
When I went to University of Nairobi as a student, I was lucky to be, to actually meet people to be taught by Goge Wadiongo, Okot Vitek, Tabanlo Leong, East African giants in literature at the time, Mishere Mugo, and among others. And I think for me, it was not exactly the beginning, but I had a very good experience. That experience gave me something very beautiful. One of it is recognizing what education is for. And not just what education is for, but how education can either distort the way you live or give you the wrong direction or liberate you. Okot Bitek was, would come to teachers and he would say, I'm teaching oral literature. So I'm just going to tell you stories and then we can analyze the stories that he moved away from the traditional teaching. We began to come home, to discover ourselves, to know where we came from, to respect the wisdom and traditions in quotes, because some of those traditions were also oppressive to women. So you learned the skills, of doing the analysis, but not from a gender perspective. But the gender perspective also came later. So it was a process of decolonizing ourselves, decolonizing the mind. And as you do that, also questioning the leadership, the contemporary leadership at the time, understanding what is happening around you, understanding why you want to do what you're doing, understanding why you also want to get into leadership, is very, very important. For me, I think a global understanding of ourselves, even for leaders. And I'm talking about this, you can also take it to the micro level. Understanding the communities that we live in, what are the challenges they're facing, who are they, where are they going, even understanding their own history becomes a very important thing intellectually, but also as a leader, if you don't understand the people you are leading, and you don't respect them, and you don't know that they know a lot, a lot of things.
In fact, the way I'm hearing you, Prof, you are addressing a whole lot of areas there to do with some of the positive contributions leaders can make, and how you need to understand leadership if you find yourself in that position.
Yes.
One, that leadership is a service you're giving to a community, and if it is a community, you need also to understand that community.
I documented around 1981, the women in the Mau Mau struggle. But you sit with those women and you become humbled by the kind of suffering they went through, and they're still surviving. Even their own interpretation of government at that time. We talk about people like, I talk down, on them, because we don't know them, we don't understand them, we don't listen to them. These days I say, I understand when somebody says, I want to listen to myself. Because nobody can take away that pain, from you. Sometimes you have to listen to it, to accept it, and know you have to go above it, And I think as leaders, I'm talking about now as general leaders, because I think for me, sometimes we don't even know the leadership that is going on in the counties, in our own communities. Yeah. There's so much we never get to know about the leadership at the community level. So sometimes we also focus a lot on political parties, which is good because they're the vehicles through which you get through. First of all, the political parties themselves.
At other levels.
Yes,
it's not just all political.
Yes, but there are so many other leadership, even women's groups leading. Sometimes, by the way, they have their own democratic way of appointing their own leaders and keeping them for 50 years.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, you don't have to be elected. This leadership styles, we also need to question them. Even political parties, leadership styles.
You have all this wealth of knowledge gathered from, the many researches you have done at the grassroots level, the conversation. In way of summary, maybe on this particular question, because you pick up some of these things as we go on, is really you have a perspective on women's leadership.
Yeah.
Just like all of us, even scholars, we have very divided, from all of that experience in one sentence, what would you say is what, has coalesced to give your own unique perspective on women's leadership? From all these experiences, what would you has been the defining, the totality of this? I know it's been a long journey, so has been mine. I am quite, but if you had to summarize all that, what would you say? These are the things that have come together to influence the way I look at women's leadership.
Talking about a leader who first of all respects the people, gets to know who they are, appreciates the knowledge and the power they have, and also what will I say, understand the level of leadership that we are talking about, but also hearing from them, listening to them, getting to know where they are going. That's, I think, a good quality. I'm just saying how I have learned.
Sophie, I want you to take on from where Prof has left off, and around the same issue. But of course, you are informed by a whole different experience, also because of your generation. And so I'm looking at you now as a young female leader who is aspiring for political office for the very first time. And you are at the same time trying to navigate, the totality of this question of governance, especially the current anarchic governance system that we are grappling with, not just here in Kenya, but elsewhere around the world. So how would you describe, from your own experience, your leadership journey? That journey, if you had to summarize it, from where you have reached at this moment, as you prepare, tell us what you think is the most important thing, and what spaces, that you are among the spaces you currently are occupying. Do you consider to be the most influential for someone aspiring for leadership, and those you consider to be terribly uninspiring, meaning they take you down? Within that space, can you perhaps just tell us, your own experience up to date?
Thank you again for having me. I think being in this space just came to me. I was born, this is the way people say a leader's born or a leader's made, but I think leadership has always been a part of my life, because in school I would always find myself as a prefect, as a person who's in charge of certain groups. So I think leadership has always been a part of me. But in this particular space of political leadership, I genuinely did not expect it to come this soon. But with everything that is happening in how our country is being run, I think it's about time that some of us have to step up, because we are really not going in the right direction.
Your generation.
Exactly. Because like you're trying to do here, intergenerationally, we need a blend of both the older generation and now an acceptance of the younger generation into the space. Because there is what we bring and there is what the older generation brings. The older generation comes with the wisdom, the experience, the toughness, and the resilience that it takes to be in that space for that long. Whilst now us, the younger generation, we bring the courage, we bring the voice, we bring the rage, we bring the audacity, we bring the authenticity, because I think being authentic is part of what the older generation has not managed to achieve. And I think that's why we are having a passing down of a culture.
What would you, if you have to unpackage that, what do you mean, the lacking of authenticity?
I think our cultural and our moral standings as a country right now are a show of the lack of authenticity from those who came before us. Because I normally don't understand why the older generation is very comfortable when things are not going okay. Like they feel they need to tell you, hey, I think you're coming too much. Could you check your words and what you say? You need to recognize that the president is the president. He needs to be respected by virtue of, you get, there's a certain level of, you are uncomfortable with it, but you're not willing to come out and actually state that this is actually giving me discomfort. Because there's a certain way that the status quo has been made that those who talk, as a woman, if you talk, if you are vocal, you're indisciplined, you lack etiquette, you're outside of your place as a woman. So people look at you like, why are you so uncultured? What's wrong with you? So I think for me, as a person who is very taken aback by things that happen out of the ordinary, personally, I pride myself in being the most controversial person in a room. Like, I will say what everybody else is thinking and they're not willing to say it. I'll say it and then everybody is looking at you like, what did you just do? We're like, who does that? Like, exactly. So I think I pride myself in that, being the same person here when we are with you and when we are behind the door. For instance, if we were to have a conversation with Prof here about you, and I say something a bit negative about you, I would be very willing to repeat the same exact thing that I said when you come to this space. But I feel like that is what is really not, that's why we need a coming together of what you guys have to offer and what we have to offer. I think then the most challenging part is the culture, because if you don't know somebody somewhere, you won't be in specific spaces. If you're not audacious enough to get yourself out there, you won't be in certain spaces. So your level of growth is also determined by your level of audacity and your level of courage. So for me, it has been God, first of all, of course, because having been this vocal and not having ever been abducted and having my children, anything happen to them, like, that's for me is God's just blessing. But also courage and the audacity to actually just say when things are not going right, I think is what has propelled me to this level. And I have been able to establish my brand as a brand that people these days are calling me chief injector. People like, I have, because I have this way of approaching things that, for example, recently I confronted Senator Cherarke and I asked him, why did you say that you would kill activists who go outside of the country for Pan-African activism? And everybody was like, girl, how did you get home? Like, that's what my brand is about. So that also depicts
Also, what you're calling authentic.
exactly, and it depicts the style of leadership that we young people now are looking for. We're looking for somebody who comes out and says, I will privatize the companies of this country from the word go. Don't tell us Mama Mboga will have money in their pocket and boda boda, serikali itakuwa. And you know that's not what you're going to do. Inside your manifesto, you know very well you have stated you will privatize companies, you will raise taxes, you will bring affordable housing. Tell people that. So that when they're electing you, they're not shocked at sasa hizi ni gani sasa umeleta. No, that level of truth, that level of standing up for what is right is what we need.
That's what in other words we call integrity, and in the strict in your case speaking truth to power.
Exactly. And I think profit also comes from understanding why are you doing this. Why is a very critical question in this journey. Why am I here? What am I doing? Once you have that level of clarity with your why, then I think it informs the mode of how you do things.
Yes. Thank you, Sophie, for that. And now I'll turn again to Prof here. And, just that's why I told you have some more space for expounding on some of the things you weren't able to say at first. And now I want to and specifically to women political leaders and aspiring ones like her here. Again, with all the experience you have, you and I have been building capacity of women political leaders for decades. So, what would you say is a major role of mentorship? We at the University of York say we are mentoring students, mentoring. So that kind of mentorship, what would you say is major role in building leadership capacity? That's only one part of the question. And what, in your view, because I want you to answer this together, would you say is the intersection between that role of mentorship with what should actually be part of it if someone has to be fully capacity built, if you want? And I'm thinking about being sponsored. We all know how the party system works in this country. They have party lists, they have a nomination process, and you can get eliminated at the point of nomination, so that you may have been a very good woman candidate for office and you don't see the light of day. So the role of sponsorship in that regard. And then what also Sophie was talking about, her own standpoint, what she is talking, authenticity. What part of, self-reliance as an expression of personal agency do you think is important? Meaning, even if you and I spend all our hours trying to sponsor, to mentor, and then, pass on level to sponsors, is that enough? Or is there also a role for, a personal agency? And part of the reason I'm asking this question, Prof, is this. There are some people who are arguing now more and more, and I'm one of them, is that mentorship and sponsorship alone may not always be may not always contribute to reinforcing as this personal agency we want to see in her. Actually, it could end up being the very opposite, create dependency. That when she fails to get her seat, she starts blaming the mentors. They didn't give her all the help. They didn't, they just abandoned her. They didn't sponsor her. That's why she was not selected. Or she went through all those steps, found herself inside the gates of parliament and seated in a place where they do business. But then she freezes there, or does something really that doesn't reflect that she's really that empowered. What do you see? How do these complement each other? What advice would you give?
And okay, let me say this again. This is a very broad issue, because mentorship, it's a different concept for, different things. But I can talk about mentorship, for instance, in the context of what I do. Okay, and I find that the best way to mentor somebody is actually to make them do things that you think, even if it means they can benefit from what you are doing. Sometimes there are different strategies depending on whom you are mentoring. Actually, mentorship through doing, I find, it's very, very useful. And I know, like, this girl, the governor of Hembu, that's the way she was trained by Gilu. She was actually working as Gilu's assistant.
Yeah.
And you learn through, it's not, she's not being given lectures. She was working through with the Gilu. At that time, we were also, offering training for Gilu. Mentorship and practical experience. For me, they are more important than, okay, I think it's also good to have the academic ones. The other thing you have.
What the thing is, as a young person, you also have to have some level of initiative.
Yes, you have to have your own initiative, and you have to be resilient.
Now, just not to lose the other component, because I think you have covered fairly well the part of mentorship, and also self-reliance, personal agency.
And personal initiative.
That one, without doubt, you are saying is a continuous.
Like we say, you can take a cow to the river.
That you cannot make it.
You cannot make it drink.
So that one, I hope our viewers and young people like Sophie, they are listening, because mentorship is not just a theoretical exercise.
No.
There is a linkage there of the practical side which has to come from the way the mentee, treats, the tools you have given to her.
Yes.
It doesn't matter the context. It could be, like what you're talking about, exam skills, or it should be even, supervising some work of yours, or etc.
But even for that mentee, you supervise, because whatever you do, then I look at it and I say, surely, is this kind of work for somebody who is a graduate? You need to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Then if they're really committed to the direction they want to go, they will also do it. So there is also, yes.
That, without doubt, she's right here, she's absorbing it all directly. But I now want us to add this other component, because it's very pertinent for those running for women political leaders or potential ones like Sophie. Our system, our political system, and it's, the way the nomination system within political parties, that is where this issue of sponsorship becomes important. What do you see is the connection between now what you have talked about, even the mentoring? We have mentored Sophie. She's already, from a point of view of being just a mentee, she's ready to do what is required within a political party, but we know also all the red tapes there. They are the gatekeepers who determine who enters and who doesn't. And even when you enter, what position you take in the political party, depending on all manner of rules of engagement. What would you advise?
For me, I think one of the things that we talk about is knowledge is power. Understand what political party you are in. What are the structures? What is the ideology? What are the, how do they function, and so on. And then you also have to identify somebody within that party, even before you get to the party itself, who can work with you as a friend, or as somebody who also understands and who tells you, don't take this route, take this route. But in the process of that, then you also decide, do you want to work with this party? Does it actually represent what you want to do? Because I think these are some of the problems that sometimes we get into the party and we also get carried by it, and then you become slaves. A slave of, no, you cannot make a decision, you cannot even contribute in the, but there must be some courage, By the way, with the good leaders, they will accept. They will accept, even if you disagree with them. They can tell you, okay, you don't agree. But for this particular purpose, can we do this? But you don't have to compromise all the time, So you retain your position. And sometimes, by the way, negotiations are always there. But we discover, even as we work sometimes with government officials or parliamentarians, we identify people from that parliament who can actually pick on a policy and run away with it. And it works. It works because you are not in parliament in the same way that you are not within that party, where this person you have identified as somebody who can also mentor you. Because in negotiations, you lose some, gain others. You choose which battles to fight. Don't fight every battle. To make you courageous. You choose the critical ones, the critical ones that will also clear the path for you. I remember telling somebody when I was being told during the constitutional review, can we go to the church and, talk about reproductive rights to make sure that they are protected? And I said, I am already fighting with so many other people. Now, if I begin fighting with the church, where will I go? For solace,
Choosing your battle.
You choose your battle.
And
Yes.
With that, perhaps I want us to move from that, we are still within
choosing your battles and choosing the people who you are aligned with.
That's right.
And you are aligned with. If you choose somebody just so that you can get in, then you are also selling your soul. And you have to... Then you have to go there and, not be able to speak.
That's right.
If you are going to that parliament, make sure that you are going with a party that allows you a certain level of independence,
so the
so that
choice
you
of
can
a
also
party
talk
is
about
important.
women without.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in a sense, you are in agreement that the three are necessary.
Interrelated.
But the most crucial part of this is how you strategically employ every these three elements and utilize in a manner where they kind of complement one another to strengthen you, both to get access to political office, but also to be able to transform that space. Because
Yes,
they're not
to
going there
transform the
to just
space.
be sitting and agreeing with everything that you found.
Yeah.
That it gives you the momentum for becoming a transformational leader and influencer, a change maker. And the manner in which you prepare yourself in terms of these three elements,
Yes.
you bring out that
Yes.
where you are able to account to your constituents when you get out of that place and say.
But courage, by the way, is very important, like the courage you have. Because let me say this, there are times, even in our life, which is not in, even if we are not in politics, we have been in the front line, in this struggle. But there are times when you say, even if I'm the only one,
I'm fine.
I'm okay.
I like that.
And but that's one, it just make peace with yourself. Once you make peace with yourself, and you know the possible dangers, and you say, even if it means I'm going to die,
It's fine.
yes, so be it. Yes. So, but let that one not be you are dying because of something small.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, you have chosen your battle, the critical one.
Identify people you can also bounce these ideas with, Yeah, so that they can tell you, okay, I think it's a good idea, but do this, yeah. Even when somebody says you don't be too, aggressive in this one, listen to it, because your idea, you must always remember where your goal is. If stepping aside a little is going to help you go towards your goal, and sometimes you are aggressive where you are knocking at a door which is already open instead of entering.
Yeah.
So I think these things are are important.
They are important, and I think you're pointing to some very useful elements that Sophie's generation could benefit from. And we are still on the same. And I would want you now to be very brief, Sophie, because we have already discussed this at length. But just very quickly, give us your personal experience with these three elements: mentorship, sponsorship, and personal agency. How do they come together from experience so far, and what are the challenges you are finding with any, and be able to set the agenda when you enter the political decision making space?
I think so far it has been good, because at the end of the day, what people want to see is your value. Like, what are you offering that is not being offered by someone else? Or what are you bringing to the table? So then that means, as a person, like Sha said, you have to have, number one, personal initiative. Initiative to look good, look the part, to talk the part, to that part for talking. It's a hard balance, because you have to calm your emotions and remain logical whilst remaining factual as well. So on being factual, it means you have to exert yourself to do research, to read, to interact with people, to raise your social capital. It means you have to push yourself out of the ordinary, so that you're acceptable to both the people who are a bit older than you, and still be acceptable to the people in your generation. Because there's a way I'll approach my generation, and there's a way I'll approach your generation. So the things I'd say to my generation, to your generation, they're like, Sophie, stop, don't talk like that. Leaders don't talk like that. But if I don't talk like that, my generation does not come to my side. But if I talk like that, also your generation's like, apana, this is not how we do things. So there's a hard balance there. But I think with the putting in the work in your own personal brand and in yourself, then allows you to get other people who support you. Because other people will support you. They'll be like, hey, this girl has something to offer. Come closer. And I think I have been lucky enough now to be caught in that space where someone says, hey, come to this space. There's an opportunity here. And I think you could be valuable in this space. Case in point, for example, we know about Linda Monanchi coming up, right? So the women who were in that space, one of them came to me and was like, I think you have something to offer. And since this is something new that is coming up, come see what you can bring to the table. You see, so that sort of validates you in as much as you are sacrificing a lot, because like me now, we have a Tukokadi campaign. I'm moving around the country, which means I'm spending less time with my children. You see, you have to make tough decisions which don't make everybody happy. So there's a level of antagonism that comes to you because you're a hardliner and you're willing to make the hard decisions. So you have to sacrifice even your social life, because the little time you have is either you spend time with your children or you sleep. So your children will come first. So you'll sacrifice your sleep and spend time with your family. It's a little bit of everything. But once you have the bigger picture in mind, you see, a person who has seen the future, it's very hard to defeat that mindset because you already know what you're working towards. So even if you're getting tired, you're losing sleep, you're losing friends, you're losing partners, you're losing a social life, you know the end goal. So it keeps you going. So as a matter of opportunity, young women have realized we are marginalized. So young women are now choosing to come together because they're like, if we work individually, we are disadvantaged. But if we consolidate, we have a bigger voice. But now within this consolidation, it is the dynamics of how that are a bit shaky. That's why I think we need mentorship as young women who are coming up, because everyone has their own pride, everyone has their own way of thinking. So just how to bring all that together, I think now is where the mentorship comes in, because now we are made to understand. Exactly. Then with sponsorship.
And also the leadership among yourselves.
Exactly.
You know, when you come together, who actually is leading.
Exactly.
And then because a leader, you know, like if you're a leader of the young group, you know, there may be things you don't agree with them, but you will negotiate.
Yes. I like that word, negotiation, because then you are able to accept that if I don't win, the entire group is still winning, even if I'm not winning from an individual perspective. And I personally like being taught. So I like understanding that I don't know everything.
That's why you're saying knowledge is power. Even when you are there together, understand the function, the workings of political parties, so that when you are strategizing, even if people go to different parties, you are still together. And then, you are still together.
So we might disseminate, but our belief and our ideology remains. So
and you can also negotiate for, you know, the things that you want within those male groups. Let me call them parties. I don't know whether they are going to be different parties in your case, but you need to negotiate as a group. You know, for instance, what you said, women are still taking care of their children. Exactly. So because you are taking care of your children, and maybe other young women have the same problems, you know, or even problems with their own partners and so on, that, you know, you are able to say, this is our bare minimum, you know, for us. You know, this is what we are looking for. And other people might say, why are you looking for 20% instead of 50%? And then you can say, you know, for now we are looking for what we know we will be able to get. You know, get it when you put it in your pocket, and you can be negotiating to the next level. So, and you will be stronger, by the way, as a group.
It's good, even the remaining issues what they talk about. Some of them already have addressed elements of them. And this one I'm putting directly to you, Prof, as a follow-up to what we just been saying here. Despite that, you know, Sophie and her colleagues may get into those positions of power because we have done the ABC to Z of mentorship, even maybe with some lab, also sponsorship. And now The door has opened. She has entered the parliament. And you know as well as I do, much as we would like to speak the best of our women political leaders, there are some who go there and they are unable to make that difference that you are counting on, that they are going to make because of X, Y, Z about women are, without saying women are better than men, there is this almost assumption that women, you make a very important, significant difference. But we know that in reality, there are many cases where that has not happened. So what I would want you to address very briefly, what seems to be the major structural and cultural barriers that seem to accompany women, to political office, because they are still patriarchal institutions, those barriers that prevent them becoming transformational leaders. And, with that, very quickly, how would you, what do you think would be the way out of this quagmire?
Yeah, I think this is also a big problem, and I know we have discussed it. With you see, when you enter that parliament, nothing has changed in the parliament itself as an institution, and it is not actually a welcome institution. We have been talking about them actually doing, even the procedures, everything that has happened in Parliament. Although there are few changes, where now they say if you have the speaker is a man, you will have the deputy speaker who is a woman. And this is much more theoretical. Beyond the individual, if you like, the individual role in that parliament, if we actually do not change the institutional culture of parliament, or even institutional culture of the county assemblies, the institutional culture, the way the structures, the way they operate, you'll find that women are entering into spaces where they are not able to express their voices. I think that is one, because if the institutional culture also includes rules, the regulations, the debates are, if you like, are carried out within Parliament and so on. So the institutional culture of Parliament, and even them promoting the culture, the Parliament as an institution, making it their business to implement the Constitution. For instance, the two-thirds gender rule, they have failed us now for more than 20 years.
Yes,
Isn't it?
basically,
So we are saying there are different challenges. One of them is like a parliament which is not committed to women's agenda. And it's not even the women's agenda to change, to implement the Constitution. Yes, exactly. To implement the Constitution. It is for the parliament. And then always moving away from their job, which is actually to legislate, the rules which are actually in the Constitution itself, to actually remain politicians in their own parties throughout the 5 years, instead of actually dealing with these issues. In some countries, like in Switzerland, because I know we visited the country when we were, just looking for how to deal with the referendum. And they had, I think, more than almost started their referendum-related issues more than 200 years ago. You cannot pass a law that you benefit from and implement it during that time. If they pass a law to increase their salaries, it can only be for the future. They cannot do that. If they pass a law that actually deals with their allowances and so on, or even car hire loans and so on, you don't implement during that period. If you come back, you can benefit, but it is meant for the future. Now we do everything wrong in our case. They are doing things, they do things that, they pass things which they know it is for their own interests. And then it doesn't matter what people say, they will go ahead and pass them. If they pass a law that says what I'm saying now, that you cannot increase your salaries, you can increase the salaries for parliamentarians, but you cannot implement.
Yes.
And you can even, and in some cases, they even decide not just that period, that the 5 years, even within the next 5 years, because these are likely to come back. So they will say to be implemented 5 years from now, or 10 years from now.
So, Prof, would you agree that that's what we normally would call abuse of public office?
It's abuse of public office.
Because they are going against the Constitution, just like you said.
That is why I was going to say that one, that it is knowledge is again power. It's important for women when they get to those positions, whether it is MCA or whether it is parliament, because you can conquer with the knowledge. You can conquer because you are able to say, this is what happens in other countries. This is what, and we also get closer to Africa in arguments, so that we are not talking about, foreign countries. Even on these matters of, housing and so on, South Africa has done much better in that area and in many other ways, So getting the information, because most of the people...
Are you saying that the largest problem we have with our women leaders when they fail to actually set the agenda, and I'm talking about a progressive agenda, it is because they don't have enough knowledge? Because it's quite important, because it raises concern about, we've been looking for both more women to get in, because we have always argued that a critical mass of women would make the necessary difference that we are looking
and I still agree. I still agree, because actually it has made a difference. She wrote the first paper on affirmative action. I actually still believe that affirmative action should remain until such a time. Because when we did not have affirmative action, we kept saying women can't do this. We did not deal with those institutional challenges. We did not deal with the fact that parliament is not friendly to women. We did not deal with the issues of, the way political parties function. So they had to be forced through affirmative action to bring in women. And when women are there, sometimes they may not do a lot. But when you as a young woman sees that they are there, it is possible to get there. Their presence has an impact, even for young women. So, I can go to parliament. So you will try. But then we also have seen that there has been a bigger group of elected women leaders after affirmative action. Before we were having one or two. In fact, the biggest number we had was during Kibaki's first term, when in fact, and he even asked us himself for the list of the women for the nominations.
As the women's movement. We set a list of 100 women.
Yes, for different positions. So their presence can make a difference. Even for Gilu, for instance, to stand as a presidential candidate, she didn't get through, but I think it still shows those positions are possible.
The courage and confidence was partially because she had this critical mass of women pushing her. And
yes, pushing her. You can do it. You can do it. I know that, by the way, when they are there, they should actually keep in touch with the women's movement outside. Because then, I remember one time I was in Mombasa, and Gilu told me, this is what we are doing, what answer should I give?
So in one sentence, if you are now advising the women who make it, they have gone through all these obstacles,
they need to educate themselves.
They are inside. They are sitting on the table now.
Yes.
And, and we are still seeing them at the end of 5 years coming out, and you ask someone, you look at them and you wonder whether they really made any significant difference. And so even if you are defending that person, can we say that perhaps part of the problem this person faced is that you found a heavy institutional culture inside that is so highly patriarchal, and you are outnumbered and outpowered that you are unable to be able to effect that change. And therefore we are then calling for maybe rethinking how we prepare women entering powerful offices. Because I'm saying, yes, ordinarily our wish is that the women go there, they are a sizable number, and they make this different. But you also have to open our eyes. Do they always do that? They don't. And if they don't, what work seems to be like work in progress. We still need to.
I think it is a work in progress, but also I think there are two things we have said. Let them keep in touch with the women outside who are in the women's movement, who support them, and continue negotiations even when they are inside. Number two, choose your battles. Because this patriarchal thing, you cannot break it down in one day. Choose what are the most effective strategies that we can use to make changes in 1, 2, 3 areas. One of the things that I think I have seen with the women in parliament is that I think I've written that with Professor Bote in one of the papers, that for the previous parliament and the other one, there were many issues related to women that actually tabled. And they actually went through. The question is not, after they go through what happens, those policies, we are very good at making policies, but have they been implemented? Even like some of the policies, kind of legislation that came with the Joki Dongo, with the Mirio Diabo, with there are quite a number, yes. So, and those ones would not have been there if the women were not there. So we can't say it is zero. The same, we should probably study more about the county government and what is happening. And we know that there's some legislation even related to food security, things that are of great concern to the women, they have been actually put on the table, but then it's not enough to pass the law. It is the implementation, which we are not very good at. But I also, like you say, I think, okay, now sometimes I want to say, there's so much to be done. When we talk about the patriarchal culture, and how do you measure how far you have gone? It is by choosing, making choices of what are the most critical areas that you can handle within 5 years. The rest, God will take care of them.
I agree.
I think we rest that.
Because if you are everywhere,
you rest that.
you are everywhere, nowhere.
Yes,
yes.
Sophie, we are talking, the professor, myself, we are not running for office, but you are. And, we are talking about setting the agenda, when you get there, in that space. And you are probably sitting here, even not sure yourself as a young woman, whether you be able to take on the weight of that responsibility, where you are not only influencing policy making and implementation, you are also trying to change institutional culture. What is your take on this? As you prepare to, when I'm preparing, you probably are just thinking about how to get there. But have you given this some thought?
Yes, because I like what she said when she says that we need to first analyze what is possible within a specific period of time. Because once you do that, then you're able to get in focused and you know what you want to action. Again, there's the aspect of nobody is going to come and hand you everything you want on a silver platter. You have to fight for it. You have to lobby for it. You have to have clarity. So first is the thing that we want to achieve as a generation is economic renaissance and economic liberation. So what are the ways to go and achieve that? We also want to achieve a sizable number of young people and women within these spaces that allow us to influence policy and decision making. So what does that look like? It looks like some of us actually taking the big step, joining the political parties, fighting for these spaces, and actually, well, I still haven't joined one yet, but it's on the aspect, like Shaz said, you have to align with the people who align with your beliefs. Because if you go into the space that doesn't align with you just for the sake of getting that seat, you'll get the seat, but you'll be controlled. But if you choose a place where you align ideologically, it's easy for you to retain your independence, like Shaz said. So that's why I haven't joined any. But with time, of course, that is fundamental because it will be the tool that will get you there. Exactly. So the thing we're trying to achieve now is just simply to show people it is possible. If a young person can actually get this seat, what can we do with that position? We begin to serve people. Then with time, then people come on board and they start saying, we can believe in women, we can believe in an example of Namibia, it's now becoming the most gender, almost the most gender
With the president
balanced, exactly, because they started somewhere. But if you look at the journey of that lady president,
Also, the other example, the other
there's the other, but you see, that's what I'm saying.
rivers.
The journey of that president for Namibia vis-a-vis the journey of the one for Tanzania is very different, because this one for Namibia has been a revolutionary. She's championed for rights of women and the rights. This other one just found herself. So you see, there's a difference. So if we can just keep at it, championing for what we want, I think with time the change will come. And the only way the institutional change can come is if you are in there. If you're huku in the periphery, you won't be able to influence the change.
Sophie. And now we are making the final closing comments. And in doing that, perhaps, you have mentioned it, both of you, so it doesn't need to be overemphasized, that an intergenerational dialogue conversation such as this is a very useful tool to begin to bridge these artificial differences that, a Prof represent that very old generation which should have vacated the positions and left the Boyenzis. And the wisdom she has is lost in the process. Because there's no way, you have no space where you can even disagree, let alone, And so I'm saying, okay, that being so, because we want, even for this particular podcast, to improve, this is an intergenerational dialogue, Prof. And I'm asking both of you the same question. What are the other methodologies you would recommend, for bringing our society together and reduce the amount of animosities that is dividing us artificially and making it impossible for us to move together as one cohesive society? Because, we focus too much on politicians and they're just a small group.
I just think it would be fine if the older generation just accepted to carry us along. It would be easier if they just had the intentionality of accepting that they won't live forever and they'll need to get people into this space who will have a level of continuity of the struggle. Because if we did, we would not be. You see, this regime has taken us 20 years back. But if we had mentorship and continuity and passing down of the mantle, I think we wouldn't be here. Yeah.
When you get to my age, then you are also happy to get people who want to go in the direction that you have been in. Yeah, so sometimes I tell myself, now I don't have to do this because you are able to do it yourself. So there's a sense in which, like she say, sometimes the younger generation doesn't remember we were young at one point. At one point. And I think they are right in, maybe sometimes not seeing that we have also walked like okay, let me say, you're in the same journey I have been in, but differently, and at different generations. There are some things I have dropped, as I go along because of the experience you go through. And like what you said, or alliances you create because of the experiences you go through. So we are able to, by having these conversations, we are able to enrich each other. And I'm saying enrich because when I know that you are on that journey, I can, maybe you should read my poem in Time for Harvest, which is called Grandma Remembers. Where you remember what has gone in up in history. So build on the history of the women's struggle, now that you're talking about women, and the democratic struggle. And just to choose the best parts of that and, the best parts of what you find to build on. So, like the way we were saying that the other nations, they have a tradition and they see it. They are bad things, but we don't want you to build on the bad ones. Build on things that are going to make this country, transform this country. And you will have examples, you'll have examples from our history on people who have actually sacrificed their lives, to make to take this country where it is. For the others, okay, I'm not saying we should not talk about them. They are also documented in history, but it's not something you want to build on, to build on. And I think that that creates some level of continuity of the struggle. And you build, and every stage becomes better than the previous one because of the knowledge that they get from those who have gone ahead and those who have been on the same path. Follow your dream, and you will realize it. I think, and Kenya needs you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amen. I agree to that as well. And thank you, my two guests, for really that wonderful conversation. As we conclude this very fruitful conversation, we wish to underscore that preparing women for leadership is not the same as positioning them to become transformational leaders. Access to political leadership is only the beginning, not the destination. Throughout this podcast, we have noted that Kenya and other countries around the world does not lack capable women that can effectively govern, nor does it lack ambition among women leaders. What it has lacked systematically and historically is sustained investment in the full spectrum of leadership. And therefore, if we are serious about the making of transformational women leaders, we must move beyond symbolic inclusion and toward ethically inspired power distribution. The power to set the agenda and the power to hold systems accountable. And therefore, if the upcoming 2027 elections here in Kenya are to mark a transformative turning point, then our focus must shift radically and decisively from simply counting how many women are at the table to examining what they are able to do at that table. From opening doors to ensuring women can walk through them with authority, clarity, and purpose. The AAA framework of access, agenda setting, and accountability is not just an analytical tool for us. It is a call to action and a call to political parties, to civil society, and other institutions, and women leaders themselves to invest in a more holistic and transformative model of leadership. Ultimately, transformational women leaders are not produced by chance. They are built through deliberate strategy, structural support, and unwavering commitment to change. So therefore, as Kenya stands at the threshold of yet another electoral cycle, the question is no longer whether women will be present in politics, but whether they will have the power to transform it. It is quite clear to us that if we fail to move beyond access, we risk reproducing the same structures of exclusion under a different face. But if we succeed in building capacity for agenda setting and accountability, we unlock the true potential of women's leadership, not just to participate in politics, but to transform governance itself. That, my dear viewers, is the challenge before us. And that is the future we must build. I thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Mantle podcast. Asanteni sana.